It is usually a Sunday morning tradition for Republicans to go to the mainstream press and defend whatever indefensible action Donald Trump has taken in the previous week. But that is not what we are seeing from one specific Republican, Rand Paul, who is calling out and promising to vote against Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill and putting it in bigger and bigger trouble. And because of that, this morning, Donald Trump was freaking out as his threats, both over Truth Social and over the phone, are backfiring, as Rand Paul detailed in an interview that we are going to get into. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, these are new details from Rand Paul with some of the worst news that Donald Trump could possibly be getting. But before we get into it, I want to start with the Republican trying to defend Donald Trump who really failed, and that was Mike Johnson right here.
Mr. Speaker, if the big, beautiful bill does add to the debt, will President Trump own that?
It's not going to add to the debt, but I can tell you that President Trump is laser focused on two primary things: delivering on his campaign promises and the America First agenda, which is what a record number of 77 million voters, popular votes, requested and demanded and gave us a mandate to do. But he's also concerned, as I am, as Ron Johnson is, as Rand Paul is, as all of us are, about the nation's debt. And he and I talk about this frequently, and he is excited about changing that trajectory. That President Trump, I think, can be the most consequential president of the modern era because he has these opportunities to do these big things. The One Big Beautiful Bill is a big first step to provide relief for the American people, to give everybody more take-home pay, more money in their pocket, and to change the trajectory of the country. And again, it's the first of a number of steps, and President Trump is committed to doing this.
Mr. Speaker, the Joint Committee on Taxation, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, the Tax Foundation, the Penn-Wharton budget model all say this will add trillions of dollars to the deficit. Are you really telling the American people this will not add one penny to the debt and deficit? You can guarantee that?
I am telling you this is going to reduce the deficit. I mean, you cite some of these figures. Do you know what their economic growth projections are? The Committee for Responsible Budgeting, they're not even, I don't think they're assuming any economic growth. I mean, that's not realistic.
Mike Johnson is obviously lying, and good on Kristen Welker for pointing that out. But this idea that Republicans see any future in which their deficit spending is ceased or they do anything about it is just blatantly not true. And they've accepted it. They don't actually care. Even Lindsey Graham spoke out against this, that it's just a preposterous idea that in the future something will change. They're just kicking the can down the road because Donald Trump doesn't actually care. There is no grounding principle of fiscal conservatism anymore in the GOP. This is a cult with its dedication solely to Donald Trump, except for some who, I guess in few and far between moments, do find themselves caring about specific issues. For Rand Paul, in this instance, it's tariffs and Donald Trump's cuts to Medicaid, the explosion that we'll see to the deficit out of this budget. I wish that was on January 6th, where he cared a little bit more, but he called out Donald Trump and gave him some real shocking news as he detailed their conversation this past week. And then I want to check out what Donald Trump had to say about how he feels about what the Senate is doing right now.
The president has taken note of some of your skepticism, and he did tweet yesterday saying that if you, Rand Paul, vote against his massive border and tax bill, the people of Kentucky will never forgive you. Do you consider that a threat? And do you know if you have three other Republicans who will join you to block it from passage?
I had a very good conversation with the president this week about tariffs. He did most of the talking, and we don't agree exactly on the outcome. But when I come home to Kentucky, I talk to the Farm Bureau, which is opposed to the tariffs. I talk to the bourbon industry, which is opposed to the tariffs. I talk to the cargo companies, UPS, DHL, all of their pilots are opposed to it. I talk to the hardwood floor people. I talk to the people selling houses, building houses. I have no organized business interest in Kentucky for the tariffs. So I think it's worth the discussion, and it's worth people remembering that the Republicans used to be for lower taxes. Tariffs are a tax. So if you raise taxes on the private sector, that's not good for the private sector.
Well, we hear from other senators who also get complaints from their people in their districts, but they're falling in line. Do you have three other Republicans who will stand with you to block this bill?
I think there are 4 of us at this point, and I would be very surprised if the bill at least is not modified in a good direction. Look, I want to vote for it. I'm for the tax cuts. I've voted for the tax cuts before. I want the tax cuts to be permanent. But at the same time, I don't want to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion. So I've told him, if you take the debt ceiling off the bill, in all likelihood, I can vote for what the agreement is on the rest of the bill, and it doesn't have to be perfect to my liking, but I can't be. If I vote for the $5 trillion debt, who's left in Washington that cares about the debt? We will have lost. But the GOP will own the debt once they vote for this.
So last night we talked about the post that Donald Trump made in which he said that he would never forgive Rand Paul, and neither would the people of Kentucky, for speaking out and calling out and voting against this bill. But it seems like it's not just the people of Kentucky. It seems like there's a lot of other Republicans whose constituents will be deeply and overwhelmingly affected by Donald Trump's cuts to Medicaid. Do you think Kentucky is a state that's sending federal funding, tax dollars, back to the U.S. government? No, it's not. It's taking it. It's not New York. It's not California. It's not Connecticut. It's not Massachusetts. These are states, Republican states, that rely on this funding. So you would probably be smart to vote against it, which is what Rand Paul is communicating. But clearly Trump doesn't see it that way, because look what he posted about what he expects to happen out of the Senate. Trump wrote just a few hours ago, "Congratulations to all on a job well done. Proud of you. Hopefully the Senate will be there with you. Donald J. Trump, President." Yeah, well, it doesn't really actually seem like the Senate is going to be there with Donald Trump, because as Rand Paul said, even though Donald Trump is threatening him on Truth Social, calling him, and as he kind of politely put it, talking way more than Rand Paul did, probably screaming, I can assume, but the Senate isn't backing Donald Trump. You've seen Ron Johnson, of course, Rand Paul, Lindsey Graham. These are people who have spoken out against the bill, and it's no surprise. It's a terrible budget. And Raphael Warnock, a senator who, of course, will be voting against it, detailed all of that right here.
And this is what this legislation does that they're trying to do. They're going to throw poor people away. I believe in work. And I recently released a study in Georgia that shows that this work reporting requirement, because that's what we're talking about, not work requirements, work reporting requirements is very good at kicking people off of their health care. It's not good at incentivizing work at all. There's something wrong-headed about this kind of view of poor people, of working class people, that somehow they don't want to go to work. We have seen this failed experiment in Georgia. We've got over 500,000 people in Georgia who are in the health care coverage gap. They are largely the working poor. The governor has put a program in place. He calls it Prosperity to Coverage. He ought to call it, or Pathways to Coverage. He ought to call it Pathways or Blockages to Coverage, because they've only enrolled about 7,000 people. That's pathetic. And the data clearly shows that if you want to get people to work, the way to do that is to provide them just basic health care so that they don't get sick. And what they're trying to do now is take this terrible experiment in Georgia, force it on the whole nation. And what we will see as a result of that is a workforce that is sicker and poorer and an economy that's weaker.
And we should note, actually, that Georgia is the only state right now with work requirements. I want to move on to another aspect of this bill. The bill allocates nearly $150 billion towards border security and immigration. Under this second Trump administration, border crossings are at some of their lowest levels ever recorded. Given that most voters, senators, say that this is a top issue, do you support the measures in this bill that would strengthen the border and border security?
Listen, I support strong borders, and we don't want to see people who are criminals, who are committing awful acts, allowed into our country. But what we need is common sense immigration laws in our country. What we are witnessing right now here in the state of Georgia, for example, a young college student who is doing well, has been here most of her life. She was accidentally picked up in a traffic stop. As it turns out, the police had it all wrong. They had the wrong person. But because of these draconian movements that we're seeing, this kind of singling out and othering people, this college student found herself in the grips of ICE. And now she's trying to navigate her way through the system. I don't believe that the people who voted for me and the people who voted for Donald Trump intended for this young woman, who is a bright young woman who already contributing to our society, to be caught up in the clutches of our immigration system. This is the politics of fear and division and distraction, and it's because they know that their agenda, their economic agenda, is not working.
And just yes or no, do you support the provisions that would strengthen border security, or are you a no on this entire bill? Just yes.
Listen, I supported a bipartisan bill last year that would have strengthened our border. It was largely a bill focused on giving our Border Patrol the things that they needed, and the Republicans decided to kill it in order to put Donald Trump in office.
All right. Let me talk to you now about the state of the Democratic Party. As you know, there's been a lot of focus on former President Biden, the state of his health in the waning days of the campaign. I want to read you a statement from one of former Vice President Kamala Harris's senior campaign advisors, David Plouffe. This is from the new book, Original Sin, which takes a look at Biden's 2024 campaign. Plouffe says if Biden had decided in 2023 to drop out, we would have had a robust primary. Whitmer, Pritzker, Newsom, Buttigieg, Harris, and Klobuchar would have run. Warnock and Shapiro would have kicked the tires. Maybe Mark Cuban or a business person of some sort. 20% of governors and 30% of senators would have thought about it. We would have been eminently stronger. You were name checked there, Senator, so I have to give you a chance to respond. Would the Democratic Party have been stronger had President Biden dropped out of the race sooner or not run at all?
Kristen, here's what we absolutely know about last year's election. It's over. And I'm going to spend all of my energy focused on the task in front of us. We are headed into a very critical week. The Republicans are trying to push forward this big, ugly bill that's going to literally cut as many as 7 million Americans off of their health care. It is a drag not only on their health care, it's a drag on the American economy. They want to cut some $290 billion out of SNAP.
I wish MAGA could find a little spine in other instances. I don't know why we had to wait for a court to strike down Donald Trump's tariffs when the tax that is imposed by those tariffs on America is actually the job of Congress. It shouldn't be done by the president and has been detrimental to our economy. And we're letting a madman with cognitive decline run the economy into the ground. Like, I don't know why we had to wait to get a little backbone, Senate Republicans, and maybe start to speak out against Donald Trump. But hopefully this comes to fruition, because the damage that will be done by this bill, as stated by Ron Johnson, the insurrection guy, will last for generations. We got to keep fighting back, calling them out. We're doing so on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around at the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.